Jim Stanford is a Canadian economist, author, and commentator, and he's currently the director of the Centre for Future Work. Jim, start us off. Give us an overview of the gig economy. What is it? How is it affecting labour markets and the world of work?
Jessica, thank you very much, and the organizers for this event. Real privilege to join you all, and thanks to all the audience. Special thanks to the subsection of the audience coming from Calgary that I see online there, who happen to be my family, my parents and my sister. So that's very sweet. And no one can be mean to me because my mom is watching. Okay, so just keep that in mind, people. Anyways, I'm so glad to join the discussion. So glad that the different riding associations are working so actively to understand what's happening in the world of work and what the progressive alternatives to this situation will be. I'm going to share some slides to walk through this. So here we go. Just give me a moment to get it all started. Hopefully you're seeing those. Okay, so understanding and challenging platform work. What is it anyways? Is it new? Why it matters and how to fight back. I do want to put in a plug for our website at the Center, centerforfuturework.ca. Everything we do is open access there, and we've published several different reports and briefings, testimonies on gig work, what the problems of the current model are and how to fix them. You can sign up for our mailing list there or follow us online on all of the platforms. 4 of them now, not just Twitter anymore, which means I waste 4 times as much of my life doing this social media stuff. But anyways, you have to. So I think that the whole debate over the platform economy, I think, is a more appropriate word rather than gig work. The whole debate over the platform economy really encapsulates the gap, the cognitive dissonance between all the hype about new technology and the incredible innovation and the amazing things that robots can do and programs can do and apps can do and algorithms can do, some kind of brave new world. And then the gritty reality of so much work in the so-called high-tech platform system. And Uber, the owners of Uber and the other platforms all claim that this is an innovative new direction for our economy. And that the old rules of the game, old-fashioned things like a minimum wage, just don't apply because this is innovation, folks. This is technology. This is the new world. And the new world seems to involve poor, desperate people hopping on a bike or hopping in a car to deliver fast food to other people who maybe aren't quite as poor and desperate as they are, so they can afford to get their McDonald's food delivered to their house. First of all, why anybody wants McDonald's delivered is still beyond me. It's barely edible when you're getting it right then and there, let alone half an hour later. But here's the key thing. Hiring someone and instructing them, a poor person, to deliver food to someone else or to pick up someone and drive them somewhere else isn't new. It's not novel. It's not innovative. And the bicycle that this person is riding, the bicycle was invented in 1860. So that ain't innovation, friends. Okay. So, and ultimately the fact that this person is barked at, gets their orders over a smartphone rather than some jerk of a supervisor telling them, where to go and pick up the food and where to deliver it, doesn't fundamentally change the nature of this undertaking. So this is an enormous opportunity to challenge the myth about technological determinism and the fact that supposedly the old rules have to be thrown out because this is a new system. This isn't a new system. Telling poor people to do menial, low-paid tasks for other people is as old as capitalism. And it's a lie when the companies say that technology means new ways of exploiting people are inevitable. So I think that the debate over platform work ties into all kinds of other things, including other forms of insecure or non-standard work, but also this bigger debate about technology and what role we ascribe for it. Is technology the villain or the savior, or is it neither? I say neither. And I reject this idea that these changes are being forced on us by some kind of external force called technology. Technology is nothing more and nothing less than the sum total of human knowledge. It's a fundamentally human thing. The compilation of our understanding of how we can use tools to make our work better, supposedly, and how it affects us depends on how it's used, which is all about choice. It depends on what type of technology is being developed, what problems we're trying to solve when we put the engineers and the scientists to work, and then how the resulting ideas and innovations are applied and how the costs and benefits are shared. So that's all about human choice and human agency, not about some kind of external technological force. And the great irony is, even though we think about technology being tools that are used in work, more of the impact is actually felt through the changes in relationships rather than the production process itself. And this is obviously clear in the food delivery or ride share end of platform work. That production model hasn't changed one iota. Hopping on a bike and delivering food is something that happened 50 years ago. And getting in a car and picking up someone and driving them from point A to point B is something that happened 50 or 100 years ago. So the production process itself hasn't changed. All the technology has changed is the relationships through which that work is organized, managed, disciplined, and compensated. And in that regard, again, there's nothing new. Bosses have always tried to use technology to intensify the work process and find ways to extract more profit from each hour of work, including supervising work, intensifying work, monitoring and surveilling work, and ultimately hiring and firing the workers. And the platform economy is one of several areas now where people can be hired and fired without ever seeing another human being, which is interesting. It's not the drivers whose jobs are at risk from technology, it's the managers, because now it's the algorithm deciding who works and who isn't. So how I understand platform work is in this kind of continuum between work, employment, and jobs. Work is the generic category that includes all productive human effort, using our brains and brawn to produce goods and services that are useful to us. And that includes paid work, unpaid work in any sector of the economy. Employment is a subcategory of work where you're doing the job for someone else at their direction. They own the value that you create through your work, and then they compensate you in some way. Could be through an hourly wage, could be through a monthly salary, could be through tips, could be through commission, could be through the little bit of the fare that Uber lets the driver keep. Okay, but they're still being compensated for their work that they're doing under someone else's direction. Now, in legal terms, the Uber driver is not an employee, but that's a completely superficial distinction. They're still clearly directed by Uber to do certain tasks, and they're just using this artifice of being a self-employed contractor as a way to avoid normal obligations, like the minimum wage. So employment is there, and then jobs are particular ways of structuring and organizing employment so that you know how the work is being organized and who's in charge and how people are compensated. So new technology is not eliminating work. I can assure you of that. Workers are as essential as they ever have been. It is not eliminating employment either. In fact, the share of Canadian people in wage labor relationships of one kind or another, and I include Uber drivers in that share is growing, not shrinking. So we are not all shifting to become self-employed entrepreneurs running our own gigs. In fact, there's more employment, not less. What is changing is jobs, how we organize the jobs and structure them, and what type of benefits and security workers have in that. And generally changing those jobs for the worse because of all kinds of things that have been happening. Technology is part of it. Technology is a tool that employers have used to restructure the nature of jobs in their favor, but technology is not causing this. What's causing this is the changing relationships between human beings, some of whom are billionaires and own platform companies, and others who are desperate workers who will sign on to an app in order to get a few hours of work at sub-minimum wage compensation. That's what's changed. And the fact that labor law has allowed it to happen because of the passivity of regulators. So the overall capacity of a kind of dog-eat-dog, hyper-competitive, very insecure, non-standard labor market is key to understanding how platform work came about. It wasn't because of technology. It was because of the fact that the economy is managed in a way where there's groups of people who are desperate for work, even very low-paid and insecure work, concentrated in non-tradable services. That overlaps with the general shift towards the deregulation of the labor market and the relaxation of former protections and standards that allow this. And it also taps into who's around to do that work. And this is where the inequality in Canada's labor market and the to's and fro's of Canada's erratic immigration policy are all about how a pool of desperate workers who is essential for the Uber business model is maintained. So let's talk a bit more about platform work. Is it even new? What are the key defining features? Number one, there's no commitment to continuing work. Your work depends immediately and completely on there being a task for you to do. So you're working on an on-call basis. You aren't paid by the hour or the day or the week. You're paid for each particular task. That's like piecework compensation. The workers have to take on responsibility for providing the equipment that they use for the work, whether that's a bicycle or a car or home computing facilities for people doing platform work in technology. And there's always a triangulated relationship between the person doing the work, the end user of the work. That could be a consumer getting their McDonald's delivered by Uber Eats. Again, I have no idea why you'd do that. And then the third point of the triangle, the end user could be a consumer. That could be another business. Think about IKEA or Amazon or other big companies that are using platform work to do services functions that are essential to their business. So it's not just the consumers who are using this system as the end users. It's many businesses as well. And then the third point on the triangle is the intermediary, the so-called middle person who supposedly connects the worker with the end user and then creams off a big chunk of the resulting money. The other thing that's clearly related to platform work is it uses a smartphone. Whoopie-doodle-doo. So you're getting your instructions on a web-based app on your phone rather than somebody sending you instructions by a radio or just yelling in your ear the old-fashioned way. So I don't consider that a fundamental change. You're still getting the instructions from someone else. So these practices are as old as capitalism. I said they're hundreds of years old, and this idea that this is a new wave in the economy is quite wrong. It's back to the future big time. The idea of homework, for example, very common in the early years of industrialization in Europe, the so-called cottage industry system, or the putting out system, as it was called, where home workers with simple equipment, in this case a loom, would get their raw materials from a merchant capitalist. Their employer was a merchant capitalist who provided them with the raw materials. They take the raw materials home, convert them into some kind of finished product. It might be textiles, clothing, footwear, simple housewares. Take the finished product back to the merchant, get paid for their work, and then wait for another gig. So guess what? That's the gig economy right there. All these people are missing is a smartphone to get the instructions. So let's give her a smartphone, okay? And now we've got the gig economy writ large. The putting out system from the early 18th century, now high-tech gig work. We could call it puttingout.com. Puttingout.com could be the website for this new business. No, on second thought, puttingout.com doesn't work. We'll find another name for this. But at any rate, the practice, hundreds of years old. Piecework compensation, hundreds of years old. Employers have always tried to make workers be their own boss by pushing them to work harder and faster with piecework compensation. Nothing new there. It has its applications. It's still used in many places today. Some factories have it as a bonus system. The only thing is that those factories are still required to make sure that on a piecework compensation basis, they're still making at least minimum wage. And that's what Uber is trying to avoid with their model. And piecework has its limitations. There's some places it's effective, some places it's not. When you work in teams, when you're more concerned with quality than quantity. On-call work, also around for hundreds of years. Think about agriculture, mining, manufacturing. These are longshore workers at the docks. They used to go down to the docks every morning, see if there was a ship that they could work on unloading. They might get tapped on the shoulder to do the work, but if not, go home, come back tomorrow. And then this idea of triangulated intermediation between the workers, the end users, and the middle person. In this case, the gangmaster, the old gangmaster system in Europe, where they would round up some desperate workers, take them to a farm or a field or a mine or a factory for a day's work, and then the fat cat gangmaster keeps half their wages. Nothing new under the sun. These things are all as old as capitalism itself. And so we have to reject this claim that because of so-called technology, Uber doesn't have to pay minimum wage anymore. The effects of platform work are insidious. The more this model spreads, the bigger the dangers become. It shifts all kinds of risks and costs to the people doing that work. It enables employers to do an end run around normal employment standards like minimum compensation, basic benefits like employment insurance and CPP, workers' compensation, severance, and other basic employment rights. It undermines government revenue because by doing that end run, the companies are depriving government of funds for those important programs. Shifts the burden instead to other taxpayers. If those workers don't have workers' comp, if those workers don't have a pension, then when they retire or if they're injured, they just fall back on the straight up public system. They fall back on old age security and GIS. If they're a poor retiree, they fall back on the public healthcare system if they weren't covered by WCB. So that's an all-out shift of the burden to the rest of us. We are subsidizing Uber every fare because of how they evade those normal things. It distorts the competition between Uber and its competitors who might follow the rules. This is true for package delivery, for example, which is a huge area for gig employees or big gig work. Where traditional companies, not just Canada Post, but companies like Purolator or United Parcel Service or FedEx, who pay their workers actual wages and pensions and the other things, cannot possibly compete with a system that allows people to be recruited for less than minimum wage and none of those impacts. I've been thinking about the impacts on productivity. We often hear that Canada's in a big productivity crisis. Well, imagine that. We've got a whole industry hiring hundreds of thousands of people who typically spend at least half their time sitting around doing nothing and getting paid nothing for it because the system does not pay for waiting time. And the system has no incentive for the companies to try and use labor more efficiently. It's an enormous drain on productivity and lots of other external consequences like road congestion, pollution, what it does to neighborhoods, this Airbnb model and how it's distorted and undermined quality and safety in different neighborhoods. The ways that platform workers are exploited by this model, they are not paid for the waiting time, which is an enormous waste of time, an enormous form of exploitation. They don't get their expenses directly reimbursed. Their take-home pay, many studies have shown, is often below the minimum wage. Sometimes it's higher than the minimum wage, and we always hear about, somebody who's had great luck and great skill and earned $100,000. That's usually before they've even deducted the car expenses. The dispatch system is very arbitrary and completely controlled by the company. It's not like a taxi system where you sign up for a certain area and your turn will come. You're completely at the behest of the platform, waiting for another job. And you're also at the behest of the platform about how much you'll get paid. It isn't even like a taxi system anymore where you get a certain amount paid per kilometer. It's built into the algorithm that Uber and the others use to offer the job to a driver with all those judgments baked in. And now we've learned that Uber uses its data on the past behavior of its drivers and other companies to suss out who on their list is going to be the most likely to accept a job, even though the pay is very low. So this is a form of algorithmic pricing or surveillance pricing. We heard Abby Lewis yesterday, an excellent intervention calling on the federal government to ban surveillance pricing for consumers. This is an application of exactly the same insidious, creepy technology into setting the price of labor. That is, how much each worker is paid will be based on data that the company's got in the past. A key feature of these platforms is the fact that the employers don't take responsibility for thinking through how many workers they're going to need to meet expected demand at any one point in time. They just outsource that job to the self-management of the drivers who self-select whether to sign on to the app at any given point in time or not. And that self-judgment depends on both how much they're likely to get paid for a ride, but also how long they're going to have to wait between rides. And this is very important for us to understand that endogenous labor supply can defeat efforts that are supposedly aimed at improving the compensation of platform workers that don't take into account this flexible endogenous labor supply. As long as there's a group of people who are willing and able to sign on to the app to make a few bucks, even if it isn't minimum wage when all their time is taken into account, then anything you do to increase how much they get paid for each particular job will be defeated because there'll be more people who sign on because the increase in what you're getting paid can now offset a somewhat increased waiting period until you get paid and until you get one of those jobs. So this is very, very important around the debate about engaged time, which is important in any of the reform proposals around platform work, including the one from Doug Ford's government in Ontario. They say, well, we'll ensure that they get minimum wage for the engaged time, which is only the time between when they pick up the food and when they deliver it. The waiting time is still free. And even if you increased the engaged time a little bit, without any kind of limits on how many drivers are on the system, or any kind of requirement that waiting time is compensated, not just engaged time, then it will have zero impact on the final take-home pay of the platform workers, because the increase in what they make while they're on a job is offset by an increase in the amount of waiting time. The solution to that is either to pay for waiting time or to limit the number of drivers on the road at any given point in time. And either of those approaches have been taken by other jurisdictions. New York City limited the number of drivers. The Europeans ensured that they paid for minimum wages. Now, there's been lots of debates and some kind of gestures, I would say, from different governments about what they think should happen. Uber and the others say that, well, we'll pay a little bit more for waiting time, or we'll throw in an extra, or not for waiting time, for engaged time, or we'll throw in an extra buck per ride for something. The dishes one, what the hell is the dishes one called? I never use these things, so I forget what they're called. Skip the dishes. Skip the dishes announced they're going to pay an extra 50 cents per 50 kilometers for, or no, $1.50, sorry, $1.50 for 50 kilometers for helping to offset the high gas prices. None of these things are going to make a significant difference. There are jurisdictions around the world, New York, I mentioned, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, that have been more forceful in defining platform workers as employees, ensuring that the basic employment standards are applied to them, and lifting their wages and conditions accordingly. BC has done a little bit better than Ontario by including the workers' comp in it all, but the focus on engaged time is still an enormous loophole that both allows the companies to sidestep their normal responsibilities and defeats any kind of ultimate impact on the take-home pay of drivers, because it's going to be offset by greater waiting time. One route that I think could happen at where the federal government, even though provincial governments have most responsibility for labor law, the federal government can make a big difference here by requiring Canada Pension and Employment Insurance to be collected from all hours of platform work. That alone would force all the companies to now start counting hours instead of just relying on people's desperation to be the motivator for more labor supply. We have had experience with platform work. As again, I said, it's hundreds of years old, and workers have been fighting for more secure and fair payment, including in so-called gig jobs. In fact, the term gig work comes from the original gigs in the theater and stage industry, and strong unions were able to organize and set standards for how jobs like that would work. Same goes in trucking and construction and other occupations where people go from gig to gig. So it can happen, but we have to be fighting back in all forums, including organizing unions, fighting at labor boards, and ultimately pushing governments to do a better job of protecting these workers. At the end of the day, this is just dated myself with this image here. This is Terminator when the robots came from the sky. The robots are not in charge. Human beings are in charge. And we have to forcefully reject this idea that this is all driven by technology. It isn't. It is driven by greed and the fact that governments have failed to ensure that the traditional rules are applied in these new business models. And that's the ultimate source. Technology could actually help. We could use some of the technology that is wielded in the platform sector to create delivery business that involve people working in different nodes and picking up different types of parcels or picking up different types of food from different restaurants. There's a germ of potential efficiency in that, but there's absolutely no reason why that has to go along with a model that says minimum wages are outdated. That's nonsense. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Jess, for your chairing, and for the organizers. Thank you.